Vicky, and today I'm going to show you how I turned this skirt into this bag. I found this skirt at the Salvos for $5. To make a bag from a skirt, you can use pretty much any style of skirt that you want, as long as it's got a waistband, because we're going to hide some of the stitching in this seam here. To make your skirt into a bag, you'll also need a zip. I pick ones that are just slightly longer than the waistband when it's folded in half. And then you'll need some fabric to make the straps and to make the zip insert on the waistband from. So I've got some black satin offcuts here. Alternatively, if the skirt you're using is long enough, you can cut some fabric off the hem and then use that to make the straps and the zip insert. The first thing I've done on this skirt is pin the lace layer to the satin layer around here, just so I can treat it as one layer as I sew it into the bag. So I'm just going to stitch around there, and then I'm going to cut it off just below where I stitch. So I've stitched the layers together and cut the hem off. Next I'm going to unpick the zip and take that out and then sew the centre back seam up, because we don't need a zip in our bag. So I've taken the zip out and I've sewn that centre back seam up, and then just finished the waistband on the inside neatly. Next I'm going to use my black satin to make my bag handles. I want my finished handles to be 20.5 inches by 1.5 inches. So I've cut 2 bits of satin that are twice the width I want, plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I've added a 1/2 inch seam allowance on each end. So to make my 20.5 inch by 1.5 inch bag straps, I've cut a piece that's 21.5 by 4 inches. I've then folded it right sides together, and then I'm going to stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance around these edges, leaving a gap here so I can turn the handle in the right way. Now my 2 straps are sewn, I'm going to trim off all my excesses and then turn it in the right way through the gap that I left in the middle here. Both straps are in the right way and I've pinned around all the edges, and next I'm going to do a line of top stitching around all 4 sides on each strap, which will just help hold it flat, and it's going to hold close the hole that we left to turn it in the right way. And once they're stitched, I'm going to give them a good press. Now the handles are finished, we're going to attach them to the skirt. So first of all, I'm going to find my centre front and centre back. So I've folded it in half with the side seams together. I'm just going to mark the centre front and centre back. And I think I want my handles probably about that far apart. So I'm going to measure out and make sure they're even. So both straps are pinned on. I've made sure they line up on both sides so they're even. And now I'm going to top stitch them onto the waistband by stitching in a square and then across, just to reinforce it as well. That's how the straps look, sewn on with the cross for the reinforcement, just to make them really strong. Next we're going to work on the zip insert for the bag. Now you can just leave your bag open if you want to, it's like a little open tote bag, but I want to put a zip fastening in mine so I can put my wallet and things in there and just know it's a little bit more secure, it's not going to fall out. So the first thing to do if you're going to put a zip in is to make some tabs to go on each end of the zip. So I've cut 2 pieces of my black satin fabric, and these are about 3 inches by 2.5 inches, and I'm going to go and press all the edges in and then fold them in half. These are my finished tabs pressed in half, and I'm going to slide them onto each end of the zip and then stitch around all 4 sides. I'm just going to shorten this end here because I want to hide that metal part of the zip. And just be really careful when you're sewing that you're not going to hit that part with your needle as you stitch it on. Slide that end into there. And these, it doesn't really matter what size you make these, that's up to you what size you want to make your tabs. That's one end. I'm going to do the same at the top of the zip. So slide those ends in there, and then I'm going to stitch around all 4 sides to hold them into place. Next we're going to add the fabric on either side of the zip. So I've cut 2 pieces of satin. I want the finished length to be just shorter than half the width of my waistband. So my waistband, when it's folded in half, is about 15.5 inches. So I'm going to make these about 14 inches. So I've cut 2 pieces that are 15 inches long, and I'm going to press 1/2 inch in at either end, and then I want the finished width either side to be about 1.5 inches. So I've cut twice that plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so this is 4 inches wide, so 1.5, 1.5 plus 2 1/2 inch seam allowances. So the first thing I'm going to do is take both and press in 1/2 inch at either end. take your fabric right side down and your zip right side up and line this edge with the top edge of the zip. I'm just going to make sure it's nice and central so we've got an even gap at each end. I'm just going to pin along there. Once that's pinned in place, take this side of the fabric and fold it under the zip. So you end up with your edges together and the zip on the inside, and then pin them in place, making sure your ends line up nicely. So we've got the right side of the satin on the inside and the zip between the layers, and both edges meeting up on the edge of the zipper tape there. So now that's in, I'm going to stitch using a zipper foot as close as I can to the teeth of the zip along here. This is how it looks once it's stitched, and now we're going to turn it in the right way. If you're using a thicker fabric, you might want to leave this part quite a bit wider to make it easier to turn. So all I'm going to do is start turning it. As we pull it through, it's a bit tricky. I kind of find pulling the zip itself through is the easiest way to do it. Once it's turned in the right way, you can see you've got that really neat seam on either side of the zip. And now to add the second part, we're going to do exactly the same again, but you kind of just have to sort of hold this part out the way. So I'm going to take this other piece of satin, right sides down, the zip right side up, pin it along the top edge of the zipper tape, and I'm going to make sure I've lined up the ends with the end that we've already sewn. And then again I'm going to bring this round and underneath, so you end up with your zip and the first side that you've sewn encased in the middle here, like that. And I'm going to line that up and pin it into place and then stitch close to the zip again. That's the second side sewn. So again I'm going to just turn it in the right way by pulling it through on itself. Now it's all in the right way, I'm just going to give it a really good press. Now our insert's finished, I've marked the centre front of my bag and the centre of the satin side of here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it inside here, and I'm going to pin it so the satin is sitting just below the seam of the waistband. So I'm going to match up those two pins. Just pop a pin through to hold that in place, and then I'm going to pin all the way along here, making sure that the edge of the satin is below the waistband seam. Now that's pinned in, I'm going to stitch it in place by stitching in the ditch between the waistband and the skirt. So that's the first side sewn in, and you can see how that sits on the inside of the waistband. And now I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side, making sure everything lines up really nicely. This side's a bit trickier, so I'm actually going to go in from the bottom of the skirt to pin it. So this is how our zip insert looks. I've got it pinned all along the second side, so I'm going to do it exactly the same and stitch in the ditch again between the waistband and the skirt. So that's the whole of the top of the bag now finished. So we've got the handles and then the zip insert here with the tabs at the end to make it nice and easy to open and close. So now that part's all finished, I'm going to turn the skirt inside out and we can start working on the bottom of the bag. So for this part, make sure you leave the zip open, otherwise when you join the bottom seam, you won't be able to turn it back in the right way. Next I'm going to sew the sides and the bottom of my bag. Because my skirt is so full across the bottom, I'm going to take some of the width off it. So I'm going to pin all the way along the bottom and then stitch it probably about 3 or 4 inches in from the side seam. So it'll be coming in at a bit of an angle, but it doesn't actually matter because it's still got enough fullness in. So I'm going to pin all the way along and then sew the sides, the bottom and up the other side. This is how my sides look now it's sewn. So I've just curved that in to lose a lot of the fullness at the bottom of the bag, and the same at the other end. So next I'm going to chop all this excess off, and I'm just going to overlock down each side and along the bottom. The last job to do is to box the corners to make a base on the bag. So what I do is I take the layers and pull them apart like that, and then line up the side seam and the bottom seam together like that. So you're creating a point with the two seams up either side, and then I'm going to sew across there about 3 centimeters up from the corner. I'll just sort of pop a pin through to make sure my seams line up, because you'll see that on the outside. I'm going to stitch it, cut it and overlock it on both ends. That's how the corners look once they're stitched and cut. And that's our bag finished, so the last thing to do is just to turn it in the right way. Enjoyed this video, please subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you click the little bell so that you get notified when I upload new videos. I'll be making more videos about sewing and upcycling and sustainable fashion very soon.